So yeah, we're finishing up our series on No Regrets today. If you have not heard the last three, I highly encourage you sometime this week to go back and listen to all of it. This is kind of building on top of all three. I used to work at a cabinet outlet. I used to deliver cabinets. It was my uncle's job. And at one point, we decided that we were going to do some kind of fair or some kind of craft thing on a weekend. So I had to go and set it up on that Friday. And then that Monday, I had to go pick up all of our cabinet stuff. We're trying to get more customers. It was at Ripken Stadium. Now, if you don't know who Cal Ripken is, then shame on you. Cal Ripken played for the Baltimore Orioles. I'm a Baltimore Ravens guy, and I'm a hardcore Baltimore Orioles guy as well. I'm just not as loud about that because it's not. I don't have anything to be loud about. So I grew up watching the Orioles, and Cal Ripken was my childhood hero. Just like anyone my age who watched baseball, that Cal Ripken was your childhood hero. And I remember staying up for the 21-31 game. My dad let me stay up. We recorded it on VHS. You guys remember those? I recorded on that. It was great. So we're there at Ripken Stadium. Never been there before. I'm kind of looking around, like, this is kind of cool. And I'm just getting all the cabinets and taking them to the truck. And while I'm doing it, I see a helicopter flying around. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. Helicopter flying around. And so I just keep doing that stuff. And all of a sudden, I'm walking, and there he is, Cal Ripken, walking. And it's just me and him. He's just walking. And I'm like in high school, college, like maybe freshman in college at this point. And I'm so excited, and I get so nervous, and he gets close to me. You know what I say? Nothing. I didn't say anything to him. He walked right by me, and I just couldn't get the courage to say, hi, Mr. Ripken, like I wanted to. And who knows what would have happened? I could have said hi to him. We could have been best friends, and just like me and Dave Grohl when I met him. Like, that could have happened. But nope, I regret not saying anything. I even saw him once at Annapolis. I was just walking around Annapolis, and Cal Ripken just walked by me, like on the street. And it was really quick. I saw him come. I was like, is that Cal Ripken? And the same thing happened. I was going to say something, and I froze. And I didn't say anything. He walked right by me. My childhood hero just walks right by me. And some of you have probably heard that story. And when I told that story in the past, I always said I said something to him, because that's a lie. I never did. I was just so embarrassed that I met my childhood hero, and I couldn't get any words out to say hi to him. I regret. To this day, I think about it, and I regret not saying anything. Not that anything would probably come of it, but I still regret it. And throughout this series, we've been talking about regrets, about what do we do with regrets, and how do we have love with no regrets. And we've been talking about throughout this entire series. Week 1, we said love with no regrets requires sacrificial love, that we need to have sacrificial love the way Jesus loved us. Then week 2, we talked about we need to take personal responsibility, that it's not your spouse's job, it's not the other person's job, that you need to take personal responsibility to say, I'm going to live out the love that God has called me to do. I'm not going to expect him or her to do it. I'm going to do it first. Personal responsibility. Then we topped on that last week when we talked about mutual submission, that we should be first and going first in an effort to be last. That everything we do, we should be trying to mutually submit to the other person. That is what we're called to do. Today, we're going to close out our series learning that love with no regrets requires forgiveness. Requires forgiveness. I don't know if you've noticed yet, if you've been here throughout this entire series, but you know what we haven't said is required for love with no regrets? We have not said perfection. We have not said, hey, you just need to stop making so many mistakes, and then you'll have a great relationship. We never said that. The reason why is it's just simply not possible. It's not possible to have any relationship without mistakes being made in it, without mistakes. And it's just not possible. None of us are perfect. So when two people that are imperfect get together in a relationship, it cannot be perfect. There's going to be mistakes. There's going to be things that we regret. We all know this, but for some reason, and I fall trap to this more than anybody, I still feel like I have a pressure in my relationship with Erica to still be that couple that doesn't really make mistakes. Like, yeah, we make mistakes, but like every once in a while I'll see that couple, it's like, yeah, but that couple, I'm sure they make mistakes, but they have the best conflict resolution possible. They communicate so well. Like, that's what we should be. And Erica and I are not that, and at times it's like, why aren't we more like that? Why do we make so many mistakes? And sometimes, at least for me, we pile up mistakes, then we make a mistake on how we handle the mistake. So then we apologize for the mistake how we handled the mistake, and we say, hey, I'm not going to do that anymore, which is a mistake, because then we make that mistake again. So then before you know it, we look back and we just have a pile of mistake bodies behind us. And we look back, and for a lot of us, it's so easy to look back and go, there are so many regrets. I said I wouldn't, and I did. I said I would do that, and I didn't do it. I said I wouldn't do it again, and I did it again. Mistake after mistake after mistake. These mistakes start to pile up. So it's easy for a lot of us, whether you're in a relationship or not, whether you even look at this as a relationship or not, just your past and what you've done in your life, and to see all these mistakes and go, man, I just have so many regrets. If I could do it again, I wouldn't have done it like that. I have so many regrets. You know what a regret is, right? A regret is a feeling of sadness or disappointment over something that has happened or something that has been done. Romantic relationships or not, there are a ton of things that we all could regret. But the question I have for today is this healthy? Is that what we should do in our life, is just look back at all of our mistakes and just go, yeah, I regret a lot of that stuff? Is that a healthy way to handle our regrets? Just to have shame and guilt over all this stuff that has happened? Is that what we're called to do? So today, as we close, we're going to move away from the romantic relationship aspect of this. We're going to give examples for your romantic relationships, and everything I'm going to say can definitely apply in your romantic relationships. We're going to move away from that just for today. As we close out the series, we're going to move away from it, and we're going to focus solely on just regrets. Today, I want to look at the type of regrets that we all face, that if we do not learn to forgive in the midst of these regrets, not only will they destroy our romantic relationships, for sure it'll destroy those. Not only will it destroy those, but it will destroy our relationships with other people, it will destroy our relationship with ourselves, and it can hinder us from our relationship with God. So what types of regrets do we all face? There's three that I find that we all face at some point. The first one is regrets from our mistakes. Regrets from our mistakes. What we've done, number one. It's so easy for us to look back at our own lives and see everything we've done wrong. All the times we lost our temper. All the times we said things we shouldn't have. All the times we were impatient with our kids. All the times that we looked at things we shouldn't have looked at. All the times that we thought things that we shouldn't have thought of. All these regrets. And to be completely vulnerable and honest with you, as your pastor, there are times where I feel like if you knew what went through my head, and if you knew how I acted at home sometimes, and if you knew how impatient I got with my kids, and if you were there for some of the fights Erica and I have, not only do I feel like at times I look back and go, man, I'm not the person that I want to be. I'm not always the person God wants me to be. And if my church knew the person I was, you would take a vote and be like, that guy can't be our pastor. For all those things, that's what he did. And at times, I'm not even trying to joke, I feel like this weight of guilt and shame because I feel like for some reason I should be a little better than that because I'm your pastor, which is stupid. But I feel that way, where I'm like, man, if they knew what I actually struggle with, what would happen? And my guess is we all feel this way sometimes, where we have these regrets and these mistakes that just feel like weights, and we think, man, if anyone knew how I really was, if they saw what I really thought, if they saw what I did when no one was around, if they saw the way I treated my spouse or my kids, if they saw it, man, they would think differently of me. Regrets from our own mistakes. There's two ways we can handle those regrets. First thing you can do if you have some things the mistakes you made that you regret, number one, the healthy thing to do is to learn from it. I'm not going to do that again. I know what I did wrong. I know how I messed up. I'm going to learn from it. I'm going to change. I'm going to move forward with it. That's a healthy way to do it. One of the first cars that I bought, it might have been the first car I bought, was a Dodge Caliber. It was a calm down, Erica. It was a bright blue Dodge Caliber. She literally almost threw up in her mouth when I said that. When I first got it, I thought it would look kind of cool, and then all of my guy friends said, oh, that's a Mary Kay car. That's what they kept calling it because it was really bright blue. And I loved it. I bought it myself. It was great. And then things kept happening to that car over and over and over. First, there was engine issues. Then there was steering issues and coolant issues. And the last thing was the drive shaft. It wasn't working. And I don't know anything about cars at all. So I took it to the mechanic and said, hey, it's not working. They were looking at it. And I don't know anything about cars, but he used a word that I knew, even as not a car guy, was not a good word. He said, disintegrated. The drive shaft disintegrated. I didn't know what that meant, but all I knew was that was going to be expensive to fix. So as a college student that literally had hundreds of dollars in his checking account and no savings account, I was like, how much is it going to cost? He said, it's going to cost about $6,000 to fix this. And so I said, sir, do you take organs? Like how? I said, what would you recommend? And he said, I would recommend you don't buy a Dodge ever again. That's what he said. And to this day, no offense if you have a Dodge, hey, good luck. I will never buy a Dodge ever again. That's what I decided. That car was gone. So I was like, I'm done with it. So I made a mistake. My mistake was buying a Dodge. So I'm never going to do it again. I learned from my mistake. And that's a healthy way. If you have mistakes, things that you've done wrong, the healthy thing to do is like, all right, what can I learn from this? How can I get better because of this? And how can I move on? But that's not always our response. The other response we can have is shame and condemnation. I failed because I'm a failure. I always fail. I make mistakes because my life is a mistake. Then all of a sudden, our mistakes can become a weight on our shoulders that we just simply cannot take off. And here's what you need to know. When you are in Christ, you are no longer your mistakes. When God sees you, he doesn't see your mistakes. He sees his son. You are not your mistakes. You are not your actions. That means that you cannot do anything to earn his grace. There's no action you can do that can make him love you more. He is not concerned about your actions. He's concerned about your heart. But that also means that you cannot do anything to lose his grace. He didn't offer you grace because of how good you were or because of the good actions that you do. He offered you grace because he loved you, and Jesus paid for those mistakes. That means that God can use you in spite of your mistakes. And more importantly, God can use your mistakes for his glory. He's the only one that can redeem your regrets for a purpose. I mean, if God couldn't do that, our Bible would be really short because there'd be no one we could talk about besides Jesus. I mean, we couldn't talk about Moses because he was a murderer and he doubted his abilities. He was in the presence of God through a burning bush and he said, I can't do it, I can't do it, I can't do it. Doubted his abilities. We couldn't talk about David, who was an adulterer and a murderer. We couldn't talk about Peter, who denied Jesus 3 times at Jesus' most dire moment. And we definitely couldn't talk about Paul, the person who wrote most of the New Testament. We could not bring him up at all. In fact, if we were interviewing for a church planner, Paul wouldn't even get to the interview. We would see the resume and go, yeah, right, you're out of here, dude. So hold on, Paul. You want to apply to a job to plant church for this movement, but you spent your entire life killing people who followed that movement. And you did everything you could to stop this movement. Now you want to be part of it? Yeah, no thanks. Well, don't call us, we'll call you. That's what we would do if Paul showed up. But Paul, whose list of regrets are longer than any of us, those regrets, here's what Paul says in Romans. He says, therefore, there is no condemnation for those who are in Christ, because through Christ Jesus, the law of the Spirit who gives life has set you free from the law of sin and death. Through what? Through good behavior? No. Through good deeds? No. Only through Christ. He continues in verse 3. For what the law was powerless to do because it was weakened by the flesh, God did by sending his own Son in the likeness of sinful flesh to be a sin offering. And so he condemned sin in the flesh, verse 4, in order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fully met in us who do not live according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. The only thing that the law can do is condemn you. It cannot save you. All it can do is show you how you do not measure up. But Jesus came, lived a perfect life so that he could be the sacrifice for our regrets, so that we can now live free from sin, not by what we've done, but by the power of the Spirit. So if you today are struggling with your regrets from the bad decisions you've made, if that's you, what you need to do is forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. You forgive yourself not because you are so great, but because he paid for it. He paid for you. Forgive yourself. When you are in Christ, you are already forgiven, so you need to let it go. You don't need to have regrets. He paid for it. For the parents in the room, remember when your child first learned how to walk? Maybe around a year. My brother's first daughter was 2 years old, and there was nothing wrong. She just was stubborn. She didn't want to do it. So remember the first year of walking? It was great. You loved it, but I want to clue you on something. Your child sucked at walking that first year. Like, I don't know your child personally, okay? But all I know is he or she sucked at it. They were not good at walking. Because no child is. But you didn't expect them to be good. They were just started, and you were like, hey, this is great. Hey, kind of keeping up. You didn't expect them to start running. You didn't expect them to start keeping up. You're like, this is awesome that they're walking. This is great. You didn't expect them to be pros. You know why? They just started. You had grace for them because they had just started walking. When they get older and they get a lot better at walking, then all of a sudden you expect a little more. Hey, you need to keep up now because you know how to walk. I'm not carrying you everywhere. You know how to walk. We expect a little more, but that first year, we don't expect that much because their skills have not improved enough. Here's what you need to know. God has given you grace, so give yourself some too. Forgive yourself. Start with baby steps. Some of us have been acting like a baby for years. You need to grow up and actually start walking more in the power that God has given you. But if you have those mistakes, you need to start with forgiving yourself. Start with those baby steps. Couples in the room, you aren't where you need to be because of the regrets you have in your life. I get it. Forgive yourself. Start over. Learn to walk. Start progressing. Give yourself grace to start to improve. Stop comparing yourself to whatever other couple that you think exists that doesn't really exist, that perfect couple that's not actually out there. Stop doing that and give yourself some grace and proceed from where you currently are. Not where you want to be one day, where you are today. What's another type of regret? Regrets from others' mistakes. Sometimes the regrets we have aren't from our decisions, but theirs. Because of those people's mistakes, from the other people's mistakes. Now we're dealing with regrets in our life because they messed up, because of their mistake. Regrets for allowing their mistakes to hurt us. Maybe we have regrets from the pain that we are facing that we didn't cause. Maybe regrets from the struggle that we have to deal with because of a mistake. Maybe for you, your spouse made a terrible financial decision or a terrible moral decision or fidelity decision. Now, you are dealing with their decisions and you have regrets. Maybe you were close to someone that hurt you and now you regret getting close to them. I don't know if you know this. If you're new, then you might not know this, but we are the fourth church to ever meet in this building. The fourth one. I don't know anything about the first one. I don't know anything about the third one. I know a little bit about the second one. That one was here the longest. And I don't know exactly the story. All I know is that it did not end well, from what I'm gathering. And the reason why I know this is because every once in a while, we will post a video, maybe for Easter or Christmas or something like that, and we'll boost it. So that means that more people can see it. We pay money so more people can see that. And every once in a while, it's happened 2 or 3 times, we will get a comment or we'll get a message, and it'll say something like this. Hey, you're meeting at the building where the last church used to meet that I was part of. And I got really hurt at that last church. It did not end well, and I've been really hurt by it. And you look exactly the same as that church. Why should I trust you? We get that. We've gotten that 2 or 3 times. First thing I say is, I wasn't part of that church. Don't blame me for that. I didn't do anything. That's the first thing. But you know why people feel this way? Someone else made a mistake that has caused them to have regret of being part of any church. Now they don't want to be part of anything because of someone else's mistake. There's some big regrets there. See, it's easy to do, isn't it? When we feel pain that we didn't cause, it's easy for us to slip into regret. They caused this pain. I didn't do it. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have agreed to this. If I knew our friendship would end up like this, we wouldn't have became friends. If I knew my family would treat me this way, I would have ran away a long time ago. If I knew my marriage would be this bad, I would have said no when he asked me. I would have said no when she asked me. I wouldn't have ever entered into this, but now I'm stuck in this because of their mistakes. A lot of us have that. So what do you do when you have regrets from the other person? You forgive others. Jesus is talking with his disciples in Galilee, and he starts talking about how you deal with sins in the church. And it's amazing to me that even back then, he had to deal with conflict in the church, and every church that has ever existed since this story has had to deal with conflict in church. It's incredible. So Jesus gives clear instructions on what you should do first. If you're in a conflict, you talk to that person, and hopefully it resolves. If it doesn't, you bring a friend with you. Hopefully that resolves. If not, then you bring the church with you, and hopefully that resolves it. If that doesn't happen, you let them go, and you do what you can. He does this whole thing of that. So Peter, being the teacher's pet that he always was, chimes in, and he has a question, and he really wants a brownie points for this question. Here's what he says in Matthew chapter 18, verse 21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? Up to 7 times? I can just see Peter being like, 7 times? That's a lot of times. I mean, and 7's like your favorite number, kind of, and I knew that. That's why I said the 7 number. So, I mean, should I do it 7 times? And listen how Jesus responds to Peter. He says, I tell you, not 7 times, 77 times. He's not giving a literal number here. He's just has the saying. No, you always forgive. I don't care what they've done. You always forgive. Yeah, but Jesus, they did it again. Yeah, forgive again. Yeah, but they always do it, and I'm always hurt. Yeah, forgive again. But I need to protect myself. I hear that a lot. I need to protect myself. Listen, I've heard so many people use the idea of boundaries to prevent them from forgiving. I get it. There are people that suck the life out of you. I get that. So trust me, there's times you need to protect yourself. But I've seen so many people create boundaries, and that's their excuse to never forgive them. We always forgive. Then Jesus gives this great analogy. I'm going to read the whole analogy, and we need to understand this. If you're here and you're a follower of Jesus, you need to understand this analogy. Here's what he says, verse 23. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servant. As he began the settlement, a man who owned 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay, the master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that had been sold repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay back everything. The servant's master took pity on him, canceled the debt, and let him go. Verse 28. But when the servant went out, he found one of his fellow servants who owed him 100 silver coins. He grabbed him and began to choke him. Pay back what you owe me, he demanded. His fellow servant fell to his knees and begged him, be patient with me, and I will pay it back. Verse 30, but he refused. Instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison until he could pay the debt. When the other servants saw what had happened, they were outraged and went and told their master everything that had happened. Then the master called the servant in. You wicked servant, he said. I canceled all that debt for yours because you begged me to. Shouldn't you have had mercy on the fellow servant just as I had on you? In anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all that he owes. Then verse 35, the last thing Jesus says, this is how my heavenly Father will treat each of you unless you forgive your brother and sister in your heart. So what's the limit on how many mistakes you can make before God stops loving you? Whatever that number is, that's how many times you need to forgive other people. That's the number. However many, whatever that limit is that you believe, okay, so Jesus, he'll forgive me for this millions of times. You need to forgive other people that many times as well. If you refuse to forgive others, you don't actually understand the forgiveness you have. You're just like this person who had their debt paid for. You can allow their mistakes to become regrets, or you can allow their mistakes to remind you of the greatness of his forgiveness by the way you forgive them. You can do that. Forgive others. Both regrets from our mistakes and the regrets from their mistakes, both those are caused by personal decisions. But this third one, I think, is actually the hardest. Number 3, the third one is this: regrets from life's mistakes. From life's mistakes. This is when it gets hard, because if it's my mistake, who do I blame? Me. If it's other people's mistakes, who do I blame? Them. But what happens when we feel like life makes a mistake? When something that is no one's fault happens to us, who do we blame then? What happens when this broken world we live in makes our personal world broken? When that doctor calls with the bad news, when that child you love wavers, when we lose that job, what happens when it seems like life has made a mistake? And we are left with regrets. We are disappointed in how things happened. How do we recover from that? How do we recover from the regrets that comes from life's mistakes? This week I was reading the book of Job. The book of Job, if you've never read it, is an interesting book. When I was a high school, college student, I would read the book of Job, and I hated it. It didn't make any sense to me. Like, I don't get how this would happen. Here's the story, if you don't know the book of Job. There's this righteous man. God says he's righteous, not righteous like his own words. God says, hey, this is a righteous man. Satan comes in and goes, yeah, he's righteous because he has all this stuff. And God says, okay, then do what you want. Watch, he'll still stay. His faith will not waver. And in my head, I'm like, wait, God, why are you allowing this to happen? Like, he's a good man. You said so. As a kid, I didn't understand it. But now as an adult, I've really started to appreciate this book a little more. Here's what happens. Job, he has a good life. Everything's great. He has a strong faith. Then all of a sudden, all of his livestock, his sheep, his cattle, his camels, his horses, everything, gone, killed. Then his servants, his people that work for him, killed. Then his kids, gone, killed. Then Job gets all these painful sores all over his body, and it says he's just scraping them all day because of how painful it is. His wife and his friends, most of the book of the Bible is his wife and his friends saying, you did something wrong. That's why you're doing this. So you need to ask forgiveness. And Job keeps saying, I'm a righteous man. I never did anything wrong. I don't know why this is happening. They keep saying, no, this is your fault. And they do the opposite. They're pushing him away from God and not closer. All this bad stuff happens to Job. But Job, through all this pain, through all of this stuff, all these questions, he stays true. It says in Job chapter 1, verse 21, naked I came from my mother's womb, and naked I will depart. The Lord gave, and the Lord has taken away. The name of the Lord be praised. You know what Job is saying here? Every gift that I have is a blessing. Everything that I have in my life is a blessing from him. So even when it feels like life has made mistakes, I choose to follow God. Why? Where else is there to go? He's the one who gave me the blessings. He can do what he wants. I'm not in control. He is. Who else would I turn to? He provides. I follow God no matter what happens to me, no matter what life brings. Here's what the book of Job teaches, especially when it comes to regrets of life. It teaches us to release control. Release control. Here's what's amazing anyways. We don't actually have it. We don't have that control. But I'm telling you to release the control you think you have to the God who actually is in control. So when regrets from life's mistakes happen, it is a way to remind ourselves, oh, I'm not in control of any of this. Everything is a gift from God. Life is going to happen either way. See, it's easy for us to look at our life and the regrets that we might have because of what life did to us, things that we don't deserve. It's easy for us to look at that, things that are beyond our control, and have regrets because of it. None of us are exempt from the pain of life. We don't have a choice of whether we face it or not. So you can face the regrets of life, and you can say, God, why would you allow this to happen? And you can allow it to push you away from the God of the universe who's in control. Or you can face the regrets of life that you are going to face and allow God to use it for his glory. We are the only people that waste the regrets of life. Only us. God doesn't waste it. God uses all for his glory when we surrender it to him. Your regrets, others' regrets, life's regrets. That's why I love what Paul says, chapter 8, the guy who has so many regrets, and then the guy who has to go through a lot of stuff once he follows Jesus. He goes through shipwrecks, he gets bitten by a snake, he has something that he didn't tell us, it's just something that's hurting him the whole time. He goes to prison until he's eventually executed. That's Paul. Here's what Paul says in chapter 8, verse 28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who has been called according to his purpose. In all things. In that marriage that isn't going the way you thought. In all things. That single life that is lasting longer than you thought. That single life that you didn't think you'd have to deal with again. In all things. That pain you feel when others hurt you. In all things. The pain from life hurting you. In all things. We know that in all things God works for the good. For those who love him. Who have been called according to his purpose. God doesn't waste anything. He uses it all. We just need to stop carrying it around with us. We need to release it. There's a guy named Horatio Stafford. He was a successful lawyer in the Chicago area. He was wealthy, successful. He had a great family. He decided to get into real estate investments. He decided to buy a bunch of houses and become wealthy that way, and it was working. Bought a bunch of houses and property and got into investments. Everything was going well until about 8:30 p.m. on an October night. This small barn caught on fire. And normally when Matt would be able to put that out, it'd be fine, but they had just gone through a long season of a summer drought. It was very dry. And that night was a particularly windy night. So what started as a small fire turned into the Great Chicago Fire. You can look it up. The Great Chicago Fire. It killed around 300 people. It left about 100,000 residents homeless. And all of Horatio's stuff, all of his investments, gone. Completely broke, has nothing. 2 years later, Horatio and his wife, Anna, they have 4 daughters. They decide they're going to take a trip to Europe. They're going to go away. And right before they're about to take that trip, they're about to get on a boat and go over to Europe. Some last-minute business things happen, and Horatio decides he has to stay back. So he says, hey, listen, you take the girls, all 4 girls, you get on the boat, go over to Europe. I don't want to hold you up. I'm going to stay back, and I will meet you over there when you get over there. Once I'm done my stuff, I'll meet you over there. So his wife, the 4 girls, get on this boat to Europe. On the journey, the ship that Anna and the girls were on crashed with an iron sailing vessel. The crash killed 226 people, including all 4 of Horatio's daughters, all 4. Anna survived. And there's a very famous telegram that she sends. She gets on a boat, and she gets to Europe, and she sends this telegram to Horatio, and the telegram says one thing: saved alone. Put yourselves in Horatio's shoes. Your business, your investments, everything you had, is gone. 2 years later, all your kids, gone. Can you imagine the regrets you could have? I mean, as a dad, here's what I would think. I would think things like, if I was there, maybe my girls wouldn't have died. If I was there, maybe something would have happened. I should have been on that boat. Maybe we should have stayed back when I had those. I shouldn't have sent them alone. I can only imagine the regrets he has. Why would that happen? Why would God allow this to happen? In the midst of all this pain, in the midst of all this hurt, Horatio made a choice. He chose to lean in to his faith instead of running away from it. And because of that, he wrote a song. It's a hymn. It's actually one of the most famous hymns that has ever been made. A hymn called It Is Well. Here's some of the lyrics that he wrote. It said, whatever my lot, thou hast taught me to say, it is well with my soul. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to ask the worship team to come on up. This sermon, to give you a little bit of background, I was supposed to preach this sermon last week, but I wanted to give myself an extra week. And this whole week, I've been praying about you, for you. Because I know that, whether you're in a relationship or not, that some of you have walked in today with regrets. Regrets from your mistakes that maybe you don't want anyone to know about. Regrets from the other person's mistake that you just cannot forgive. Or it's the storms in life that you're dealing with that no one knows about. When I read the story of Horatio, which is a real-life Job story, it really happened, and I read those words, it is well with my soul. Whatever my lot, that means whatever happens to me, whatever's going to happen, whatever's happening right now, whatever's going on, I'm going to decide today, it is well, my soul. So here's what we're going to do as we close. We're going to do something a little different. And I've been praying that for you that are here, the people that are here that have those regrets that you walked in with. As we play this song, It Is Well, I'm not going to ask you to stand and sing. You can if you want. I'm going to ask you to respond how you want. We're actually going to have people around that's available for you to pray with. And here's why we're going to do that. I know that at times it feels weird. I know at times it can feel like a little bit of pressure to get up from your chair and go talk to somebody, but here's what I know. It's very easy to make any decision today and to release anything that you're dealing with right now by yourself without talking to anyone when the music's playing and the feelings are high. It's easy to do that. And then you go and do your normal life. You go back to work on Monday and you forget about it. I believe there's power in prayer. I believe there's power when 2 people get together, there God is. So what I'm going to do is, as this song plays, I want you to respond however you want to respond. There's people in the back right now. If you want to stand and sing, stand and sing. If you want to find someone to pray with, you find someone and you pray with them. I know for a fact there are people here that need to pray with somebody, that need that time to just declare today, it is well. Even though I'm going through pain and hurt and sorrow, it is well. It is well with my soul, whatever my lot. So my hope for you today is that you will take this time to either find someone to pray with, find someone near you that you need to pray with, connect with this song, connect with the God of the universe who says that he is there for you and with you no matter what you are going through. Dear God, I pray that today you help us to release that control, release what we are going through, release that pain. God, I pray that you give us the courage to take that step, to talk to somebody about what we're going through so that we can have somebody pray with us. We know there's power in that. We can have somebody that knows what we're going through, we can just release it and talk to somebody about it. Dear God, I pray that you allow these next 5 minutes to be a time when we can connect with you. The God who takes all of our regrets and all of our mistakes and all the things that we're going through in life and uses it for a purpose. God, I pray that you help us to make that decision today. In your son's name, amen. Take this moment. This is for you.